The year is 1203. The Seljuk Sultan of Rum has assembled one of the largest armies ever seen in the Caucasus. He has crushed kingdoms. He has burned cities. He has never lost. And now he is marching on Georgia. But waiting for him on the other side of the Araxes River is not a queen, it is a king. Her name is Tamar, king of Georgia, and she is about to deliver the most devastating defeat in Seljuk history. To understand why this battle mattered, you need to understand who Tamar was, and why her very existence on the throne was a provocation. Tamar was the daughter of King George III of Georgia. In 1178, while still a teenager, she was crowned co-ruler alongside her father. When he died in 1184, she became sole monarch, officially titled King of King, the first woman to hold that title in Georgian history. The Georgian nobility wasn't exactly thrilled. Twice, powerful lords tried to dethrone her. Twice, she crushed the rebellions. She then remarried after divorcing her first husband, a Russian prince, and chose David Soslan, an Hellenian warrior of royal blood, who became her greatest military commander. Under Tamar, Georgia entered what historians call its Golden Age. Territories expanded, trade flourished, the arts exploded. The poet Rustaveli dedicated his masterpiece, The Knight in the Panther's Skin, to her. But her greatest test was still coming. The Sultanate of Rum, the Seljuk state based in Anatolia, had been a thorn in Georgia's side for over a century. Ever since the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, Seljuk power had reshaped the entire region. By the early 1200s, Sultan Rungin ad-Din Suleiman Shah had reunified much of Seljuk power in Anatolia and was aggressively expanding eastward. He saw Georgia, prosperous, Christian, ruled by someone his culture refused to call a king, as an irresistible target. In 1202 and 1203, Suleiman Shah gathered a massive coalition force. Medieval Georgian chronicles describe the army as numbering in the hundreds of thousands. An exaggeration, certainly, but the army was enormous. It included Seljuk cavalry, allied Turkic tribes, and soldiers drawn from across Anatolia. He sent word to Tamar with a simple demand: submit, convert, or be destroyed. Tamar's reply was silence, then preparation. Georgia in 1203 was not the small, fragile kingdom many outsiders assumed. Under Tamar, it had evolved into a formidable military power. The Georgian army was built around a core of heavy cavalry, armored knights known as Asnari. These were supplemented by infantry from the mountainous regions, allied Kipchak Turkic cavalry from the steppe, ironically the same ethnic group as many of Suleiman's soldiers, and troops from Armenian and Caucasian Albanian vassals. Commanding this force in the field was Tamar's husband, David Soslan, a brilliant battlefield tactician who had already led Georgia to a string of victories across the region. Tamar herself did not fight on horseback, but she was no passive figurehead. She directed strategy, maintained morale, and was present near the battlefield. Georgian chronicles describe her praying through the night before the engagement. The Georgians also had one decisive advantage. They chose the ground. The two armies met near the Basiani plain, in the region of Basiani, in what is today northeastern Turkey, near the Araxes River. The exact date was likely late summer of 1203. The terrain was open, steppe, good cavalry ground. But David Soslan had positioned his forces carefully, using the river to anchor one flank and high ground to limit Seljuk encirclement. Suleiman Shah opened with what he did best, a massive cavalry charge across a wide front, designed to overwhelm the Georgian line through sheer numbers and momentum. The Seljuk horse archers rode forward in waves, loosing arrows to disrupt the enemy before the heavy cavalry crashed in. David Soslan did not flinch. Every military instinct says, when you're outnumbered 2-1 or more, you find good defensive ground you let the enemy come to you. David Soslan ignored that playbook entirely. Rather than forming a defensive line and letting the Seljuks dictate the rhythm of battle, he launched an immediate aggressive strike with his advance guard, a fast-moving vanguard of elite cavalry, directly into the Seljuk camp before the enemy could fully organize their lines. Think about what this meant tactically. A massive army like Suleiman Shah's doesn't just appear ready to fight. It takes time to arrange 150,000 men into coherent battle formations, to position cavalry, to organize infantry, to assign commanders to their sectors, to communicate orders down the chain. That process takes hours. David Soslan was trying to steal those hours. By striking before the Seljuks were ready, he was attacking the army's nervous system, its command structure, its formation, its confidence, before the body of the army even had a chance to act. Confusion spread through the Seljuk ranks. Soldiers who expected to be the attackers suddenly found themselves scrambling. But here's the thing. It almost didn't work. Here is what Suleiman Shah didn't know, or didn't account for. The Georgian army had not been arranged randomly. David Soslan had deliberately split his force into 3 groups. A center that would absorb pressure and draw the Seljuks in, and 2 independent flanking wings, Western Georgian units on the left, Eastern Georgian units on the right, with strict orders to hold their positions no matter how bad things looked in the center. This is the hardest order to follow in medieval warfare. When you see your comrades getting slaughtered 50 meters away, every instinct screams at you to go help them. Undisciplined armies break formation trying to do exactly that, and then the whole structure collapses. The Georgian flanks held. They watched the center get hammered. They watched their fellow soldiers dismount and fight hand to hand. They did not move. And when the Seljuk center had fully committed, when Suleiman Shah's troops were deep into the Georgian center, momentum pushing them forward, attention focused on breaking through, David Soslan gave the signal. Both wings moved at once. The left flank drove into the Seljuk right. The right flank drove into the Seljuk left. 2 hammer blows from opposite sides, hitting simultaneously, driving deep into the flanks of an army that had no formation left to defend them. This is called a double envelopment, and it is one of the most difficult maneuvers in military history to execute. It requires 2 separate commanders to coordinate perfectly without modern communications. It requires the flanking troops to show almost superhuman discipline, and it requires the center to hold long enough for the trap to close. Hannibal did it at Cannae in 216 BC and destroyed a Roman army 3 times his size. David Soslan did it at Basiani over 1,400 years later, against an army that was also far larger than his own. The Seljuk formation shattered. Units that had been advancing now found enemies behind them. The front line had no idea what was happening to the rear. Officers couldn't communicate across the chaos. What had been a coherent military force began dissolving into a panicking crowd. Men threw down weapons. Commanders abandoned their units. The pursuit that followed was merciless. Georgian cavalry chasing the broken Seljuk forces across miles of open valley, cutting down soldiers who had no formation left to protect them. The Georgians captured the enemy's battle standards, the ultimate symbol of military victory in this era. They captured the emir of Azinkan, Suleiman Shah's own brother-in-law, along with dozens of other commanders and nobles. And Suleiman Shah's own brother, captured, bound, brought before the Georgian court, he was eventually ransomed. For 1 horseshoe, not a bag of gold, not a fortress, not a treaty, 1 horseshoe. It was a deliberate, calculated humiliation, a message broadcast to every kingdom, every emirate, every sultanate in the region. Georgia had not just won a battle. It had sent a signal that would echo across the Caucasus for a generation. The Battle of Basiani was not just a military victory, it was a geopolitical earthquake. In its immediate aftermath, Georgia moved to capitalize swiftly. Georgian forces swept into northeastern Anatolia, capturing the city of Kars and pushing deep into Seljuk territory. The cities of Erzurum and Erzincan briefly fell under Georgian influence or were forced to pay tribute. The Sultanate of Rum never fully recovered its eastern ambitions. Suleiman Shah, humiliated and politically weakened, died just 2 years later in 1204, his empire fractured and demoralized. For Georgia, Basiani marked the absolute peak of the medieval Georgian state. Tamar was celebrated throughout the Christian world. The Georgian Orthodox Church later canonized her as equal to the apostles, a title given to only the most extraordinary figures in church history. She is still referred to in Georgia simply as the king, Meph, not queen. The king, because no other title felt sufficient. The Battle of Basiani is often overlooked in Western history, sandwiched between the Crusades and the looming Mongol invasion that would ultimately end Georgia's Golden Age in the 1220s. But it deserves far more attention. It stopped a major Seljuk advance into the Caucasus. It demonstrated that the Seljuk military machine, which had humbled the Byzantine Empire and reshaped the Middle East, was not invincible. And it showed the world that Tamar's Georgia was a major power in its own right. King Tamar died in 1213, just 10 years after Basiani. Within a generation, the Mongols would sweep through Georgia and end the Golden Age forever. But for those brief decades, Georgia shone.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and like it. And let me know in the comments, whose story should I cover next?